Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Davison and Michael Hogue.
So back again here with the fourth section on our 5-part series called The Top 5 Reasons That Retirement Plans Get Derailed. Michael?
Thanks, Dallas. Number 4, it's quite an involved one, and I've called it not working backwards. So what we mean by working backwards, it actually requires you to think about your retirement, and these are all the variables that go into working backwards. So you decide at what age you would like to you decide at what age you'd like to retire. So we call that a date-specific retirement.
Yeah.
So if you're age 55, that's the example we use today. If you're age 55 and you want to retire at 65, then you know that you have 10 years to go. So that's the date.
Yeah.
Work out how much you would like to be able to spend each year. So go back to section 1 and we talk about undertaking a budget as if you were retired. So it's working out if you were retired today, how much you would spend. So if that's $70,000 as an average, and that actually happens to be the average of our clients who are retired today in 2019, then that's the figure. You need to apply indexation to that. So $70,000 in 2019 dollars requires almost $90,000 in 2029 if you're retiring in 10 years, assuming that costs rise by 2.5%. So that's the Reserve Bank of Australia's target inflation rate. So they expect inflation to rise by 2.5% per year. So it is a moving target.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, those three points. The age that you'd like to retire at, the amount that you need to spend, that you want to spend each year in today's dollars, and then what's that figure likely to be at retirement. It's a bit like any sort of goal or plan that you need to come up with is that if you go to a dietitian and say, I want to lose weight, it doesn't necessarily help that dietitian come up with a plan. And that's kind of what you're talking about with working backwards, is that before we can start to look at all of the ins and outs of what needs to happen and how we're going to make this happen, we need to go, what does that look like? What would success look like? What's the retirement that you're trying to plan for? What is that specifically?
That's right. Number 4, work out what your super funds, or what level, what value your super funds need to get to on the day that you retire in order for you to be able to retire. Now, the step before that is a good input. So if you need $70,000 to retire in today's dollars, and you want to retire in 10 years with expected inflation or cost rising of 2.5%, you'll actually need $90,000 in 10 years' time. You can then work out how much your ideal super fund balance would be at that point in time. So without going into too much detail today, the ideal balance would be 20 times. So you'd have 20 times $90,000, so 20 times the income that you require in the first year of your retirement, which would be 1.8 million. It is different for everyone though, so don't get too despondent if you never get to that figure. But ideally it would be north of 15 times and ideally 20 times. Work out how, this is a really important one, work out how many fortnights between now and your retirement date. So if you want to retire in 10 years, you have 260 pay packets if you get paid fortnightly. You have to take action right now. It's no use wasting 26 of those pay packets and starting next year. You have to start now. So you divide whatever that is by your pay frequency. So if you get paid fortnightly, it's 260 pays. If you get paid monthly, it's less. Obviously, if you get paid weekly, it's more. Working out a funding plan is the next step. So how much do you need to contribute to your superannuation fund every fortnight for the next 260 fortnights to get to that figure that we talked about?
And this is sort of one that we just spoke about in the last section around the effect of compounding over time, is that people tend to underestimate that if you've got 260 fortnights or 260 pays left before you retire, you can break down your goal, where the amount that you're short by. It doesn't actually tend to be a huge amount each fortnight, and like we said, it tends to be a lot easier to say, rather than saying you're a couple of $100,000 short or whatever. It's basically saying, well, you're really only probably a few $100s a fortnight. So we just need to find every fortnight this amount to fund that contribution to super or that debt repayment or whatever it is. We need to work out what that amount is each fortnight that you need to be putting aside to be able to grow your retirement savings.
It's a good point. It's a lot easier when you break it into those fortnightly chunks. It's a smaller amount and it's a consistent amount, and it's about being consistent over that period of time. Work out the rate of return that you require on your superannuation funds between now and when you'd like to retire, in order to get. So that's another variable that makes a huge difference. So oftentimes we hear approaching retirement, should I be investing more conservatively? It's a nice theory, but for a lot of people, they just can't afford to do that. For most people, they can't afford to do that. So without taking exorbitant risks, of course, they do need to work their money a little bit harder than what they naturally think. Yeah. So it's a variable to look at what rate of return you would need.
It ties a bit into that previous point, obviously, is that for many people, as we're saying, if they want to be more conservatively invested and their rate of return is likely to be lower, well, that just means that the funding plan of how much they need to put aside each fortnight is that much higher. So it's about getting those two components working together and go, okay, well, how much am I putting aside every fortnight, and what's the return that I'm going to get on that money over that last 10 years to help me boost my retirement savings?
Make sure you aren't leaving money on the table. So we talked in point 2, which was called leaving money on the table, where the average couple at age 55 are leaving somewhere in the vicinity of $7,200 in tax savings on the table. So that money is currently going to the ATO, when it could be sitting inside their superannuation fund. So look at all the obvious things.
And that's my favourite one, that one, because it's not like the funding plan where you have to give something up every fortnight. It's not like an extra return where you have to try and work your money harder. It's effectively, unless you want to give that money to the ATO, that's just free money.
It's free money. We love free money. It's one of those things that doesn't happen often, but any time that you can achieve free money, it's something you definitely want. Build in some contingency plans as well. So a cash buffer to smooth out time out of work potentially over that period of time. So you'd have ideally some funds parked away where if you were made redundant or didn't work those 260 fortnights complete, you'd be able to continue on with your contribution or funding plan into your superannuation fund. Have the right amount of personal insurances to cover health contingencies. So that would be income protection, total and permanent disabled insurance, life insurance. That's a bit of a double-edged sword because you also have to. They tend to rise. Those costs as those costs tend to rise as you get older. So it's working out the right level to give you, so that you're not financially you're not detrimented too badly financially if health causes you to be out of work for a period of time. Treat any age pension that you may receive as a complete bonus. What the government giveth, the government taketh away. Well, not actually even taketh away. Changeth, if that's the word. Changeth the word.
I don't know, mate. You're the old Christian Brothers school. You probably know more about that.
Reduceth. Is that a word?
No.
It should be. So, the point there is that on the 1st of January 2017, anyone who was getting a $16,000 age pension, that reduced or halved to about $8,000 if they were getting a part pension, because the government changed the assets test reduction factor rules. So we tend to treat age pension as a complete bonus, especially for people that are only 55 now. They won't qualify for another 12 years by age when they're age 67.
Yeah. So we just don't know what the rules will be at that point.
We don't know what the rules will be at that point in time. I can only expect that they're going to make it harder and harder for people that they think should be completely self-funded to get any age pension. So we treat that as a complete bonus.
Yeah.
Now that's a lot, and certainly not an exhaustive list, but it's certainly what's required in order for you to have a workable, coordinated financial plan for your retirement.
Yeah, and I think the point with a lot of these different, as you said, there's a lot there. The important thing with each of these is knowing that, as you said, it's about working backwards here. So we're trying to work out, okay, where is it that we need to be, and then looking at things as they really are. So facing the reality of, well, what do I actually need to do on a regular basis to get to that point where I need to be. So that age pension is a great example of one where we can sit here 10 years out from retirement and hope that, well, I'll cross my fingers and hope that I get enough age pension to top that up. But that's not reality. That's not what we can work on. And so it's about seeing things as they really are and taking the steps required from looking backwards at that and going, okay, what do I need to do now to make the steps to make all that happen and work together?
That's right, and we certainly don't want this podcast to be any type of marketing tool for us. So it's for information. However, we do this stuff every day. I mean, we love doing this stuff. There's so many. These are all the variables, and again, it's not an exhaustive list that goes into whether someone, 10 or 15 years out from retirement, retires the way that they want to retire, or they retire with less, and the only way that they can retire. So we do this stuff every single day. We actually even get excited about it. So which is so many of our clients say, if we had the time, we'd be able to probably put this in place and to maintain it and to keep ourselves focused, but they're just not interested in it, and they're time poor. We actually enjoy doing it. It's what we do. We love doing it. We love seeing people get to their full potential. So certainly, if you need help with any of this stuff, certainly make contact to the office, and we'd be only too happy to meet with you and explain
these
how
different components.
we could make a difference in your life.
And that's a great point. Is that as you said, there's a lot in that. It's a bit. It's easy to say. You have to work backwards from where you want to be, but it's kind of a bit of the curse of knowledge with us, where we can look at this and go, okay, well, if that's where for most people, when we say it sounds like you want to be there in 10 years' time, they're not even necessarily sure of whether that is where they need to be. So working that out, and then all the different components, and making sure that you are taking care of all of the different parts of this, it is something that is fairly involved, and so it's important to step through each of these individually and make sure that you are taking advantage of everything you can be, and you're going to get where you need to be.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.